I always knew I wasn't the favorite. You don't grow up in a family like mine without learning how to read between silences. It wasn't always obvious, not at first. But some things you start to feel before you ever understand them. I'm Ava Mitchell, born and raised in a small suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. My parents were always working. Mom was a nurse, often doing night shifts, and Dad drove trucks long distance. So from the age of 5, I spent most of my time at my grandparents' house. Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Robert. Warm home, big oak tree in the yard, Sunday breakfasts with blueberry pancakes. On the surface, it was everything a child could want. But then there was Logan. Logan Walker, my cousin. Aunt Marlene's only son. He was a year younger than me, always smiling, always asking questions. To most people, Logan was charming. To my grandparents, he was golden. I used to think I was imagining it. The extra scoop of ice cream Logan always got. The way Grandma called him her bright star. The way Grandpa taught him how to fix things, even though I was sitting right there too, hands raised. "That's not for girls, honey," he'd say with a pat on the head. "Go help your grandma in the kitchen." And so I helped. I stirred gravy while Logan held wrenches. I folded laundry while he climbed up on the roof with Grandpa. It didn't matter that I got better grades. That I was quiet, respectful, never got into trouble. In their eyes, Logan could do no wrong. One summer, when I was 10 and Logan was 9, we both entered a drawing contest at the local fair. I spent hours on my picture, a fox curled up beneath a tree under a starry sky. Logan drew something quickly the night before. The next day, my drawing got second place. His didn't place at all. But guess whose picture got hung up on Grandma's fridge? Logan's. I remember staring at it, confused. Grandma just smiled and said, "He's got such a vivid imagination, doesn't he? You're both so talented." That was when I started realizing the truth. Not with anger. Just a slow settling inside. A recognition that no matter what I did, I would always come second. Logan had this way of commanding attention. He'd break something, like the time he knocked over a lamp, and Grandma would laugh like it was cute. If I had done the same, I'd be scolded for not being careful. Once, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. I was supposed to be asleep on the couch. "Oh yes," she said. "Logan's such a joy. That boy is going places." "Ava? Oh, she's sweet too. A quiet little thing." That sentence stayed with me. A quiet little thing. I was 11, and I started to resent it. It wasn't that I hated Logan. Not yet. Back then, I still hoped it was all in my head. That maybe one day they'd see me. Really see me. But time passed. Logan got older. He got louder, cockier. He started cutting class in high school. He'd come to Grandma and Grandpa's house with excuses. It was just a substitute. They weren't teaching anything. They'd nod, smile, pour him lemonade. If I so much as came home with a B on my report card, I'd get the disappointed frown from Grandpa. The day things really changed was Thanksgiving, senior year of high school. I had just gotten my acceptance letter from UCLA. I was over the moon. No one in our family had ever gone that far from home, let alone to a top university. I was waiting all dinner to share the news. When I finally did, Grandma smiled politely and said, "That's nice, dear." Then she turned to Logan. "Have you decided about community college, sweetheart?" "I might take a break," he said, shoveling mashed potatoes into his mouth. "Oh, you deserve it. You've worked so hard," she cooed. "Worked hard?" The boy barely scraped through school. I blinked. My stomach churned, the turkey tasting suddenly bitter. Dad gave me a side glance, but didn't say anything. My parents never interfered with how my grandparents treated us. Maybe they were just grateful for the free childcare over the years. After dinner, I went to the living room to get some air. The TV was on low, some football game playing in the background. Logan came in, sat beside me, kicked his feet up. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said, staring straight ahead. He nudged me. "You always get weird on holidays." That's when I turned to him and said, "Do you ever notice how they treat you and me differently?" He raised an eyebrow. "You mean better?" I flinched. "So you do notice." Logan just smirked. "Don't take it personally. They just like me more. Always have. He said it so casually. No shame, no hesitation. Like it was the weather. I got up and left the room. After that, I stopped visiting as often. I moved to Los Angeles for college and rarely came back to Ohio. When I did, it was quick trips, funerals, weddings, holidays I couldn't avoid. The distance gave me perspective. I built my own life, worked hard, made new memories without the constant reminder that I wasn't enough. Still, I called. I sent cards. I remembered birthdays. Part of me, some small, aching part, still wanted their approval, their recognition. Then came the news. It was late summer. I had just turned 29. Mom called me, voice thin and hesitant. "Sweetheart," she said, "your grandparents finalized their estate plan. They're leaving everything to Logan." I felt like someone had punched the air out of me. All of it. I whispered. "Everything," she confirmed. "The house, the savings, even the land upstate. All in his name. They didn't even mention you." I sat down on the floor. Cold wood against my skin. Silence stretched between us. "They said you're doing fine on your own," Mom added gently. "That you don't need help." Need? No. I didn't need it. But didn't I deserve to be acknowledged? Didn't I matter? I hung up and stared at the wall. Memories came flooding back. Logan's drawings on the fridge. Logan's name spoken with pride. My efforts, my accomplishments, my loyalty, always muted. Always dismissed. And for what? Because I wasn't flashy enough? Because I didn't play the clown? Because I was too easy to forget? That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I booked a ticket home. The flight home felt colder than I remembered. Ohio summers usually carry a heavy, muggy warmth, but as I stepped out of the airport into the thick air, something inside me shivered. It had been almost 3 years since I'd last stood on this soil. The Mitchell house hadn't changed. White siding, green shutters, the creaky porch swing that always tilted slightly left. But somehow, it all felt foreign now, like walking into a memory that wasn't mine anymore. Grandma Eleanor answered the door with a warm smile. "Ava, sweetheart," she said, wrapping me in a loose embrace that smelled faintly of rosewater and old fabric softener. "Hi, Grandma," I said, stiffening just a little. Grandpa Robert was in his usual recliner, staring at the muted TV, but he smiled when I walked in. "Look at you," he said. "California hasn't frozen your manners, I hope." I smiled politely. "Still remember how to say please and thank you, Grandpa." They didn't bring up the will. Not that day. They acted like nothing had changed. We sat through tea and pie, small talk flowing like syrup over bruised skin, sweet, but sticky and uncomfortable. But something was different. I noticed it almost immediately. There were pictures of Logan everywhere. New ones. Recent ones. Logan in a suit. Logan on a boat. Logan with Grandma at a brunch. I wasn't in a single frame. My graduation photo had been removed from the hallway. I remembered exactly where it had hung for years, beside the stairs. It was gone now, replaced by a framed picture of Logan shaking hands with someone who looked like a city councilman. I tried to brush it off. Maybe they had simply rearranged things. Maybe they didn't mean anything by it. But deep inside, a whisper had started. A doubt. A ripple. That night, I stayed in my old room, still preserved like a museum of my teenage years. Posters on the walls, a faded trophy from my high school science fair, and an old notebook tucked into the dresser drawer. I flipped it open and ran my fingers across the lines. My name was written at the top of each page in neat block letters. I wasn't imagining the difference in how they treated me. I never had been. At breakfast the next morning, I asked Grandma, as casually as I could manage, "So, Logan's doing well?" She beamed, eyes lighting up. "Oh yes, so well. He's working with a property investment firm now. Bought a little condo near the lake. You should see it, immaculate." "I heard you've made him the executor of your estate," I said, watching her expression carefully. She froze. Only for a split second. Then she sipped her tea. "He's family. We trust him." "I'm family too." Grandpa cleared his throat. "You don't need to worry about any of that, Ava. You've always been independent. There it was again. You don't need help. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. Later that afternoon, I went into the attic, under the guise of looking for old photo albums. Truthfully, I was looking for something else. I didn't know what, exactly. But I felt itchy, uneasy, as if something in the house had shifted and I couldn't see it clearly. The attic was stuffy and dim, filled with old suitcases and dusty boxes. I opened one labeled legal, old, and found a folder with dates scribbled in Grandpa's handwriting. Inside were copies of old wills. There was one from 2009 when I was finishing high school. In it, the estate was split evenly between me and Logan. Then another one from 2015. Same thing, 50-50. Then nothing. No updated version. No copy of this supposed new will that left everything to Logan. Why wouldn't they have it? I took a picture of both old versions. Something wasn't adding up. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind churned through half-memories, side comments, and silences I'd brushed off over the years. I remembered how, after Grandpa's minor stroke 2 years ago, Logan had been helping with paperwork. Grandma had said, "Thank God Logan's been taking care of all that. Your grandpa gets confused now." Confused. Vulnerable. What if? I got out of bed and texted my mom. "Do you know who handled Grandpa and Grandma's estate update? Was it a lawyer?" She replied almost instantly. "I think they used a friend of Logan's. He brought someone to the house, I remember. A guy named Jared or James. I don't know exactly." My heart sank. The next morning, I mentioned it casually over breakfast. "So, you used a new lawyer this time?" Grandma raised an eyebrow. "Logan referred someone. Young man. Efficient. Efficient. Convenient. Was I ever consulted?" I asked. Grandpa's hand trembled slightly as he set his cup down. "We didn't think we needed to. You're far away. Logan's always been here." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Later that day, I drove into town and visited an old friend, Hannah Dorsey, who now worked as a clerk at the county probate office. She had always been sharp, discreet. When I asked if any wills had been filed or registered under my grandparents' names recently, she paused, bit her lip. "I shouldn't give you this," she whispered, glancing around before slipping me a printout. It listed a will filed just 4 months ago, drawn up by Jared King, independent notary, signed only by the grandparents and one witness, Logan Walker. My breath caught. A witness isn't supposed to be a beneficiary. Not legally. I stared at the paper, the heat rising behind my eyes. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was something else. That evening, I returned to the house and found Logan already there. He was sitting at the kitchen island, sipping wine and charming Grandma with stories about some new property deal. "Hey, Ava," he said like nothing had changed. "How's LA? You still doing that, what is it, creative marketing?" "It's digital media consulting," I said flatly. He grinned. Right. Fancy." I sat down across from him, locked eyes. "Do you remember a guy named Jared King?" I asked. Logan blinked, just once, before his smile returned. "Sure. Why?" "He's the one who filed the new will, right? The one you witnessed?" His face changed. Slightly. Almost imperceptibly. But I saw it. "That's none of your business," he said casually, taking a sip of his wine. "Oh, I think it is." Grandma looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" Logan stood. "Don't do this, Ava. You're being paranoid." I rose too. "Am I? Or are you hiding something?" He leaned in close, voice low. "You're not going to ruin this for me." I stared at him. For the first time, I saw something behind his eyes. Not just arrogance. Not charm. Something darker. Calculated. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the walls, trying to quiet the rage simmering under my skin. The picture was becoming clearer, and with each passing moment, I could no longer dismiss the whispers in my gut. Logan had orchestrated something. I didn't know the full extent, but I knew enough to realize this wasn't just a case of generational favoritism. It was deception. And possibly fraud. I spent the next morning in town with Hannah again. I needed more than just suspicion. I needed proof. I checked further, she whispered, as we huddled in a quiet corner of the clerk's office. Jared King isn't a licensed estate attorney. He has a notary license, yes. But he's been flagged twice for ethical complaints, mostly dropped quietly. One of them involved a will that was rewritten under questionable circumstances. Same pattern? I asked. Hannah nodded grimly. Beneficiary witnessed the will. Beneficiary introduced the notary. No family consultation. And was the previous version of the will different? I asked. In that case? Yeah. The original split assets among 3 people. After the update, 1 person got everything. My stomach turned. Sound familiar? She slid a flash drive across the table. I shouldn't even be giving this to you, but it includes scanned copies of both your grandparents' older wills and the newly filed one. Study the signatures. Compare the language. Something's off. I can feel it. I thanked her and left. Back in my childhood room, I opened my laptop, heart pounding. I laid out the documents side by side on the screen. And there it was. The old wills, professionally drafted, notarized by reputable firms. Clear language. Coherent division. Equal assets to Ava Mitchell and Logan Walker. But the new will? Sloppy formatting. Inconsistent phrasing. A signature from my grandfather that looked wrong. I pulled out a birthday card he'd sent me 5 years ago, with his usual message, "Love always, Grandpa Robert." I held it against the PDF version of the new will's signature. They didn't match. Not even close. The strokes in the will were jagged, unsteady, more angular than his normally rounded cursive. And oddly, the date beside his name was in Logan's handwriting. I knew because Logan had this strange way of writing 7s with a flat top, like a European 7. Grandpa never did that. My jaw clenched. He forged part of it. Maybe all of it. But I needed more than suspicion and comparison. I needed someone who could validate the forgery. I made a few quiet calls and emailed the files to a handwriting analyst I once worked with during a brand authentication project in LA. By nightfall, I had her response. Ava, based on preliminary analysis, I can say with 90% confidence that your grandfather's signature on this new will is not genuine. It's either forged or traced poorly. Happy to do a full report if needed. I sat in stunned silence. It was real. All these years of feeling like I wasn't enough, of being told I didn't need help, that I was too capable to be considered for support, it was all a cover for something much worse. Logan hadn't just taken everything. He'd stolen it. The next day, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to tip him off. I needed to hear it from someone else's mouth. Someone inside. So I turned to the only person left who might have seen something. My Aunt Marlene. We met at a quiet diner. Just the 2 of us. She looked surprised I'd reached out, but agreed to meet. After ordering coffee, I leaned in. Aunt Marlene, were you there the day the new will was signed? Her spoon paused in mid-stir. What? Why are you asking? Because I think Logan forged part of it. Her expression didn't change, but her hands trembled slightly. I'm not accusing you, I added quickly. But I need to know. Were you there? She sighed heavily, setting her spoon down. No, I wasn't there. But Logan mentioned it afterward. He said Grandpa was forgetful, and it was best to just simplify everything. He told me not to worry about it. Did you know he was listed as the witness? That's not legal. Marlene blinked. What? No, I didn't. Silence stretched between us. Then she said quietly, your grandfather wasn't himself after the stroke. He'd get confused. Repeat things. He even forgot Logan's name once. That hit me like a punch. I had the final piece now. A mentally vulnerable man. A manipulative nephew. A will rewritten in secret. And a greedy silence that stretched across the entire family. I stood. I'm going to talk to them, I said. They need to know what he did. That evening, I waited until dinner. The 4 of us sat around the table, Grandma, Grandpa, Logan, and me. The air was thick with politeness. The kind that masks landmines. I cleared my throat. I need to bring something up. Grandma looked at me gently. Of course, dear. I turned to Grandpa first. Do you remember signing a new will 4 months ago? He furrowed his brow.
Will.
Logan cut in quickly. He doesn't remember much lately, Ava. Don't confuse him. I ignored him. Do you remember Jared King, Grandpa? Grandpa squinted. Was that the boy with the briefcase? Yes. He frowned. I didn't like him. Talked too fast. Reminded me of a salesman. I looked at Grandma. Did you read the document fully before you signed? She hesitated. Logan said it was just a simple update. We trusted him. Did you know he was the only one listed to inherit everything? That your old wills divided everything equally? Her hand went to her chest.
What?
Logan stood. Okay, this is ridiculous. No, I interrupted, my voice louder than I expected. What's ridiculous is that you witnessed the will yourself, which is illegal. What's ridiculous is that your friend isn't even a proper estate attorney. What's criminal is that the signature doesn't even match Grandpa's real handwriting. And I have the analysis to prove it. Grandma looked stunned. Grandpa looked confused. Logan's face twisted with fury. You're trying to make a scene out of nothing. I pulled out the printout from Hannah and set it on the table. Then explain this. He snatched it and glanced over it. His jaw tightened. You're reaching. I pulled out my phone and played the voicemail from the handwriting analyst confirming her findings. I'm not reaching. I'm revealing. Logan stared at me, and for the first time, I saw him unmasked. Not smug. Not clever. Just cornered. He looked at Grandma. Don't believe her. She's always been jealous. She never liked how close we were. Grandma didn't respond. She looked at the papers in front of her. And then she whispered, What have you done, Logan? For a long moment, the kitchen was silent. Not the gentle kind of silence that comes from peace, but the sharp, uneasy silence that wraps itself around your spine and holds you still. Grandma stared down at the papers, her lips trembling slightly. Grandpa sat slumped in his chair, looking tired, like his mind was trying to catch up with a world that had moved too fast without him. Logan, still standing, clenched the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. You don't understand what she's doing, he said, his voice low and bitter. She's twisting things. She's always resented me. I'm not twisting anything, I snapped. You manipulated two people who loved you into signing away everything, behind the entire family's back. That's not favoritism, Logan. That's fraud. His eyes narrowed. You think this family ever cared about you the way they did me?
Please.
You left. You built your little California life and only came back to throw accusations around. I stood now, too, my voice rising. I left because I had to earn everything on my own.
I was never handed anything.
Not love. Not praise. Not trust. You got it all. And it still wasn't enough for you. Grandma spoke softly, her voice cracking. Logan, is this true? Did you alter the documents? He scoffed, stepping away from the table. What does it matter? You said yourselves you trust me.
You always have.
I took care of everything when no one else was around. I made sure things got done. That's not a justification, I said. You took advantage of them. You preyed on their trust. You lied. Grandpa looked up then, his voice frail but clear. You forged my name, didn't you? Logan didn't answer. He just stared at him, his own grandfather, and for once, the cocky confidence slipped from his face. Robert, Grandma whispered, her hand reaching for his. Oh my God. Tears welled in her eyes. It didn't trust us to make the decision ourselves? You didn't even tell me? I was trying to protect the legacy, Logan muttered, but his words were losing strength. You said I was the responsible one. You told us what we wanted to hear, she said, her voice breaking. But you never let us decide. My chest ached as I watched it all unravel. The people who had never really seen me were now seeing too much, too late. And then came the moment I hadn't expected. Logan turned to me. You think this makes you better? You think they'll love you now? You're just a bitter, forgotten girl who needed to tear me down to feel big. No, I said calmly. I don't want them to love me. Not anymore. I just want the truth to mean something. He stared at me for a long second. Then he grabbed his coat and walked out the front door, slamming it behind him. The silence afterward was louder than anything he'd said. Grandma buried her face in her hands, sobbing softly. Grandpa just sat there, staring at the cold teacup in front of him like it could somehow explain what had happened. And I stood in the kitchen, not triumphant, not vindicated, just tired. I didn't want revenge. I wanted honesty. But in families like mine, that always seemed to cost more than anyone was willing to pay. The days after Logan left felt like walking through the remnants of a collapsed house, dust still in the air, walls no longer stable, memories scattered like broken glass. I stayed at the Mitchell home longer than I'd planned. Not because I wanted to, but because my grandparents needed someone. Grandma barely spoke for 2 days. Grandpa forgot entire conversations. I wasn't sure if it was his age, the trauma, or guilt, but the spark in him had dimmed. No one said it, but I knew what they were thinking. How did we not see this coming? It was a question I'd asked myself my entire life, but now they were finally asking it too. On the 3rd day, Grandma called me into the den. She sat in Grandpa's old reading chair, holding a worn photo album in her lap. Her eyes looked smaller, softer, less certain. "Ava," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I owe you more than an apology." I sat down across from her and waited. I was blind. Not just recently. For years. You were always dependable. Strong. You didn't need much. And I mistook that for not needing us. I swallowed hard. Her words chipped at something I'd locked away for a long time. "We poured everything into Logan because he demanded it," she continued. "He made himself unavoidable. And we were flattered by that, I think. It made us feel needed. But I needed you too," I said quietly. "I just didn't know how to compete for your love." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't try to hide them. "I'm so sorry, Ava." For the first time, she took my hand, and not the distant, performative touch of past holidays, but a sincere, shaking grip that said she finally saw me. We sat in silence after that, 2 women sifting through decades of emotional neglect and realizing just how much had been lost between them. That evening, Grandma called a lawyer. A real one this time. She explained everything about the forged will, the suspicious notary, and the unauthorized changes. It would take time, the lawyer said, but the new will could likely be challenged and voided in probate, especially with the handwriting analysis and the obvious legal breach of having Logan as a witness and beneficiary. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But Logan wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a blocked number. "Ava," his voice said, cool and calm, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't say anything. "You know, they'll change their minds again," he continued. "They always do. And when they do, you'll be right back where you started, on the outside." I hung up without a word, but his voice lingered like oil in my ears. The next morning, Grandma's mailbox had been smashed in. Then the week after, someone slashed one of her tires. She didn't want to believe it was Logan, but I did. He was unraveling. And I knew, people like Logan don't lose gracefully. A month passed. Then came the final twist. It happened in the most unassuming way, through a package. A thick envelope arrived at the Mitchell house, addressed to me. No return address. Inside were several pages, photocopies of emails, text messages, and a letter. It was from Jared King. In it, he confessed that Logan had pressured him into forging the new will. He admitted that Logan had typed the entire document and brought his grandfather's signature in on a separate page for Jared to trace. He explained he'd stayed quiet out of fear. Logan had threatened to ruin his notary license, to expose past misconduct. But Jared had reached his breaking point. In his letter, he wrote, "This has haunted me. I can't carry it anymore. I'm sending this to you anonymously in hopes that you'll do the right thing, even if I didn't." I turned the letter over. At the bottom, there was a faint watermark, probably from the copy machine he'd used. I brought the contents to Grandma's new lawyer immediately. With this, the case was open and shut. The forged will would be thrown out. Logan would be formally reported. And best of all, the original 2015 will, the one that split everything evenly between Logan and me, was still valid and uncontested. When the court finalized the decision, my name was restored to the estate. I had won, but I didn't feel victorious. I didn't even want the money. I wanted peace. And justice. Logan disappeared not long after. Word got around that he'd moved out of state. Changed his number. No one knew exactly where he was. But I had a feeling he wasn't done watching. 3 months later, I returned to California. I stood in my apartment, unpacking a box when I saw it, tucked between 2 books. A photo.
Of me.
From that Thanksgiving years ago. It wasn't a picture I remembered taking. In fact, it was from behind, me walking alone, holding my college acceptance letter. On the back, in handwriting I knew too well, was a message. You still don't get it, do you? You were never invisible. You were the threat.
L.
I froze. The room went still. It wasn't the note that terrified me. It was the realization that it had been placed in my belongings without me ever noticing, which meant he had been here, in my space, watching, waiting. That night, I changed the locks. I bought new cameras. But I also did something else. I wrote a statement, sent it to the authorities, shared Jared King's letter, secured a restraining order. I wasn't going to live in fear of Logan Walker. Not anymore. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, the court formally removed the forged will from all public record. My grandparents transferred the house, not to me, but into a trust for charitable giving. It was Grandma's way of making amends, she said. You earned your life on your own, Ava. We want to honor you by giving others a chance to do the same. I smiled. For the first time, I felt seen, not for what I had suffered, but for who I had become. The last time I saw Logan was in a dream. He stood at the edge of a hallway, watching me silently, arms crossed. When I asked what he wanted, he didn't speak. He just smiled. And vanished. I woke up cold, but calm. Some ghosts don't need banishing. They just need naming.